A reincarnation of the strongest sword god. Chapter 91 Gathering of Monsters. A moment later, Shi Feng led the three youths to the largest combat room in the Candlelight Hotel's basement. At this time, 6 people had already gathered inside the combat room with a radius of 100 yards. Of them, 5 were young men and women around 17. All 5 of these youths were only at level 102, which was the current average for mainstream players, and they were also geared in nothing more than fine gold equipment. Meanwhile, these youths behaved like frightened rabbits as they stood before a masked female assassin. When Hidden Soul saw Shi Feng entering the room with 3 unfamiliar faces, she asked in surprise, "Are these 3 the test opponents?" At a glance, Hidden Soul could tell that Dusk Cliff and the others were already close to reaching the refinement realm standard. So long as they could make it a habit to remove all of their unnecessary movements, they would reach the refinement realm. For these 3 youths to reach such a standard at such a young age was quite an amazing feat, and they could already barely be considered geniuses if put in the various superpowers. Normally, the various superpowers would have long since snatched up such youths, so it'd be incredibly difficult to find even one of them unaffiliated to any guilds. Yet, Shi Feng had found 3 of such talents. Will they do? Shi Feng asked. They'll do. Hidden Soul nodded. Let's begin right away, then. Meanwhile, when the trio in question overheard Shi Feng and Hidden Soul talking about them in such a casual manner, they felt their blood pressure rising. All right. Turning toward the trio, Shi Feng pointed at Wu Lingling's group of 5 and said, "You will fight the 5 of them together. There won't be any restrictions imposed." The 5 of them. Dusk Cliff and the others couldn't help but be a little confused when they turned to look at Wu Lingling's group. Not only was there a significant gap in equipment standards between their 2 groups, but there was also a huge gap in combat standards. Based on their observation, they could say with certainty that nobody in Wu Lingling's group had reached the refinement realm standard. With such a huge disparity, even one of them could take on Wu Lingling's group of 5, let alone all 3 of them. It should be known that they were graduates of advanced gods domain academies. Taking on a bunch of freshmen was a piece of cake for them. Rather than a test, it'd be more appropriate to call this a bullying session. However, Dusk Cliff and the others didn't put too much thought into the matter as they quickly got into battle positions. "Don't blame us for this. This is the guild leader's instructions," Dusk Cliff said, expressing his helplessness as he looked at Wu Lingling's group of 5. The requirement of their respective guilds' higher UPS was for them to become core members in Zero Wing. Now that they were only internal members, they'd have to perform well and prove their worth if they wished to become core members quickly. Meanwhile, Wu Lingling and the others didn't say anything in response to Dusk Cliff's words. Instead, all 5 of them quickly got into position, none of them daring to make even the slightest mistake. After experiencing how scary Hidden Soul could be, none of them wanted to experience it for a second time. Begin. After seeing that everyone was in position, Hidden Soul started the combat room's battle mode. Immediately, Dusk Cliff and the others drew their weapons and got ready to take action against Wu Lingling and the others. Meanwhile, as if Hidden Soul's words had triggered something in them, a crazed look suddenly appeared in the eyes of Wu Lingling and the others. Then, before Dusk Cliff's group could react, Wu Lingling the swordsman activated her berserk skill that doubled her basic attributes and sent out over a dozen sword lights that locked onto her opponent's vitals. At the same time, Xiao Yuheng the ranger and Lu Yueshan the cleric also activated their berserk skills. Then, Xiao Yuheng started raining arrows down on Dusk Cliff's group while Lu Yueshan summoned light barriers to surround the trio. As for Lu Yuxuan the guardian knight and Qin Wuchen the assassin, they had also activated their respective berserk skills and appeared in front of Dusk Cliff's group. Damn it! Dusk Cliff's group was startled by this situation. They didn't think Wu Lingling's group would be so crazy and scary. Hurriedly, they activated their berserk skills and tried their best to block the 5's coordinated attacks. However, the moment they clashed with Wu Lingling's group, Dusk Cliff and the others realized a scary matter. Rather than academy freshmen, it'd be more appropriate to describe the 5 juniors in front of them as reckless little monsters. The coordination between the 5 was excellent, and the way they chained their attacks was seamless. It was as if the 5 of them were of one body, and they didn't even need to look to know what each other was doing. They had also flawlessly used each other's skills and spells to their own advantage. However, this still wasn't the most frightening matter. What was even more astonishing was their combat standards. Even though Wu Lingling and the others looked like they were only 17-year-olds, all 5 of them were already close to reaching the half-step refinement realm. Or, more specifically, they could already exert fine control over their 4 limbs. Wu Lingling, in particular, was at the half-step refinement realm already. Subsequently, in less than 30 seconds, all 3 members of Dusk Cliff's group collapsed to the ground, while everyone in Wu Lingling's group remained alive. What kind of place is Zero Wing? How can a new guild produce such a group of little monsters? Even after Dusk Cliff and the others got resurrected, none of them could believe the outcome of the battle. These were 17-year-olds they were talking about. When the 3 of them were at this age, even the Trial Tower's 6th floor early stage was far out of their reach, let alone the half-step refinement realm. Yet, now, out of the group of 5 juniors before them, 4 already possessed combat standards nearing the 7th floor's early stage. One of them even reached the half-step refinement realm standard already. After factoring in their perfect coordination, they could probably hold their ground against even a refinement realm expert. Meanwhile, after experiencing this fight, Dusk Cliff and the others gradually understood why their 2 guilds had tasked them with infiltrating Zero Wing. The guild known as Zero Wing definitely wasn't as simple as they thought. In reality, let alone Dusk Cliff's group, even Shi Feng couldn't help but be astonished when he saw how the fight turned out. He didn't expect Hidden Soul to be such a capable trainer. It had only been a few days since Wu Lingling and the others started training under Hidden Soul. Yet, now, the combat experience they showed already surpassed what Blackie and the others possessed. Moreover, they had already practiced the exercise he taught them to a very high level of proficiency, and the way they utilized their skills and spells even made use of some of the Flowing Water Realm's principles. At this rate, it probably wouldn't take more than half a month before all 5 of them reached the refinement realm. Meanwhile, Hidden Soul nodded her head and said, "Not bad. Since all of you passed the test, we can end your training for today. From tomorrow onwards, we'll be conducting your training outdoors." Upon hearing Hidden Soul's words, Wu Lingling and the others loosened their breaths simultaneously. Their tense expressions also relaxed significantly. "We finally passed," Wu Lingling said as she patted her chest. Then, she smiled at Qin Wuchen and the others, saying, "Thank goodness our opponents this time weren't strong. I don't ever want to experience getting killed thousands of times again." Dusk Cliff and the others couldn't help but feel offended as they looked at Wu Lingling. Yet, they had no words to say back to her. Shi Feng also couldn't help but take a look at the resurrected trio before him. Chapter 92. That's right, she is only an outer member. After the test was over, Wu Lingling and the others logged out of the game to rest. They had been training continuously for a long time before the test, so all of them were incredibly exhausted now. Not to mention, they also had many things they needed to do tomorrow. Meanwhile, after Wu Lingling's group left, Shi Feng turned toward Dusk Cliff's group and said, "I heard from Blackie that you 3 wanted to become Zero Wing's core members." "Yes." Dusk Cliff and the others turned to look at Shi Feng, their eyes full of wariness. Even so, their voices did not contain any hesitation when they spoke. After their fight with Wu Lingling's group, they came to understand that the seemingly ordinary man before them definitely wasn't an ordinary person. This was because the moment they stepped inside this combat room, they immediately noticed how powerful and extraordinary of an existence she was. Even though Hidden Soul was clearly standing there, none of them could perceive her presence. Although they had never come across such a situation before, they knew that anyone capable of accomplishing such a feat absolutely possessed incredibly high combat standards. This was because even the Tier 5 assassins they had come across in their respective guilds were incapable of erasing their presence to such an extent. In other words, Hidden Soul should be top tier even among Tier 5 experts. Yet, despite being such a powerful expert, Hidden Soul was not Zero Wing's guild leader. Moreover, based on the conversation they overheard, it would seem that this female assassin was answering to Shi Feng's instructions. God's domain was a world where the strong were respected. No matter how respected a guild's guild leader was, so long as this guild leader lacked strength, experts stronger than the guild leader would, at most, treat the guild leader as an equal. There was no way these experts would behave like obedient underlings. The fact that Hidden Soul was following Shi Feng's orders without question meant that Zero Wing's guild leader was stronger than this female assassin, and under no circumstances should they underestimate him. Meanwhile, few players in God's domain would join a guild without desiring to climb to a high position in the guild. In the rare case that such players appeared, there was a high chance that they were spies. Hence, rather than deny Shi Feng's question, it'd be best if they openly acknowledged it instead. Not bad. It's good to have ambition. Shi Feng nodded. Duskcliff and the others were momentarily stunned by Shi Feng's response. What did he mean? Also, why did it feel like Shi Feng had touched a nerve in them? Do you see her? Shi Feng suddenly asked as he turned toward Hidden Soul. Her. Duskcliff and the others also turned toward Hidden Soul, feeling a little confused by Shi Feng's question. Nodding, Shi Feng said, she is currently an outer member of Zero Wing. Outer member? Her. Duskcliff and the others couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock, feeling as if Shi Feng was playing a joke on them. After all, how could an expert, who they suspected to be at the peak of Tier 5, be only an outer member of Zero Wing? Hidden Soul. That's right. Looking at the trio, Shi Feng said, but you don't need to be surprised. The only reason she is an outer member is because she wants Zero Wing's mana technique legacy but doesn't want to get tied down by restrictions. There. Dongcliff and the others were shocked. They originally thought Blackie was joking with them when he told them that the guild offered a mana technique for exchange. After all, mana techniques were incredibly precious resources, and even the various superpowers top-tier geniuses wouldn't necessarily be able to get their hands on one. Yet, now that a suspected Tier 5 expert had joined Zero Wing for the specific purpose of exchanging Zero Wing's mana technique, it proved that the matter of Zero Wing offering a mana technique legacy for exchange was true. Moreover, the mana technique in question should be beyond the standard fare. Otherwise, there was no way someone of Hidden Soul's caliber would want it so much that she'd willingly join a small guild like Zero Wing. After all, the various superpowers would be more than willing to offer her a mana technique should she choose to join them. Of course. Shi Feng calmly said. If you can get your hands on that mana technique legacy, not only can you reach Tier 4 in a short time, but you can also establish a sturdy foundation for Tier 5. However, you'll need a significant amount of GCPs to exchange it. Even if you three are internal members now, the technique will still cost you 8 million GCPs, so you'll have to work hard if you want it. Establish a foundation for Tier 5. When Duskcliff and the others heard Shi Feng's words, a passionate flame ignited in their eyes. With their talent, the three of them were confident in reaching Tier 4. Reaching Tier 5 was too difficult of a feat, and the chances of them succeeding were incredibly slim. Meanwhile, every Tier 5 expert was in existence standing at the apex of God's domain, and even the various superpowers would treat Tier 5 experts as VIPs. If they could get promoted to Tier 5 in the future, they would instantly ascend to the peak of life. Meanwhile, after Shi Feng offered some words of encouragement to Duskcliff's group, the trio also went about doing their own things, leaving only Shi Feng and Hidden Soul inside the combat room. You treat your subordinates very well, Hidden Soul said, feeling a little surprised. They're not my subordinates, Shi Feng said, shaking his head. Or, more precisely, they're not true members of Zero Wing, but rather spies from other guilds. Hidden Soul was stunned. You know that Zero Wing is very poor. The guild has hardly any money and resources right now, Shi Feng calmly said. If I don't give them some encouragement and tell them that the guild offers mana techniques for exchange, would the guilds behind them willingly send money and resources our way? It should be known that 20-year-old half-step refinement realm experts were considered geniuses even by the various superpowers standards. Yet, 3 such geniuses had chosen to join Zero Wing instead of a superpower. No matter how one looked at it, there was no way this situation was normal. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered wasting so much effort into nurturing Wu Lingling and the others. Hidden Soul had nothing to say. She felt that Shi Feng's words made a lot of sense. At this time, Shi Feng suddenly received a message. Then, after reading the message, he looked at Hidden Soul and asked, "Do you have time to go out on a trip with me right now?" "Go out? Now?" Puzzled, Hidden Soul said, "It's going to be nighttime soon. The nights here are very dangerous outside." Nodding, Shi Feng said sincerely, "That's why I am inviting you." Hidden Soul. After opening the system map, Shi Feng pointed at a place several maps away from 100 Flow City and said, "Don't worry. It isn't a dangerous place. We'll only be making a trip to the Misty Canyon." When Hidden Soul took a look at where Shi Feng pointed, she couldn't help but ask, "You want to visit a level 120 map?" The miniature ancient world's level suppression was much stronger than the level suppression on the main continent. Just a difference of 5 levels would increase a monster's challenge difficulty by 1 rank. In other words, if players tried to challenge a Great Lord that was 5 levels higher, they would essentially be going up against a Grand Lord that was 5 levels higher. If the monster in question was a Grand Lord, its challenge difficulty would increase to that of a Grand Lord ranked archaic species. If players fought against monsters 15 levels higher, an ordinary Great Lord's challenge difficulty would directly increase to that of a mythic monster. In response to Hidden Soul's question, Shi Feng cancelled the concealment effects of his black cloak. When Hidden Soul saw Shi Feng's level of 105, she realized that he actually possessed the ability to visit the Misty Canyon. Then, after pondering for a moment, she said, 500,000 points. As a Tier 5 expert rivaling Tier 6 God-ranked experts, her services did not come cheap. It was especially true when she needed 40 million points to exchange for the Holy Annihilation Mana technique. "Deal. Let's go," Shi Feng said without bothering to negotiate prices. Then, he made his way out of the combat room. "Did I ask for too little?" Hidden Soul was a little stunned when she saw Shi Feng's decisiveness. However, she still quickly sorted out her equipment and followed Shi Feng. Chapter 93 Ancient Dark Gold Mount. Outside the Candlelight Hotel, Sokyun Liu and the others had long since been waiting here. Meanwhile, when Sokyun Liu saw Shi Feng coming out of the hotel, her first thought was to walk up and greet him. However, before she could do so, she suddenly entered an alert stance when she saw Hidden Soul walking behind Shi Feng. This was because the moment she saw Hidden Soul, her instincts told her that the other party was a monster-level player that could give even the various superpowers a huge headache. There was no doubt that Hidden Soul was much stronger than the likes of One-Eyed Ghost. Meanwhile, when Shi Feng saw Sokyun Liu's wary expression, he calmly said, "No need to worry. She is with us. She's one of us." Sokyun Liu was shocked when she heard Shi Feng's words, and she couldn't help but scrutinize Hidden Soul's cloaked figure. The strength of a guild depended greatly on the number of strong experts it possessed. If one Tier 6 God-ranked expert was enough to elevate a guild to the status of a top-tier first-rate guild, then 2 Tier 6 God-ranked experts could get a guild recognized as a superpower in God's domain. If Hidden Soul truly was Zero Wing's member, Zero Wing's future wouldn't stop at just the first-rate standard. It was entirely possible for the guild to become a superpower in the future. "Did you bring the things?" Shi Feng asked, not bothering to elaborate on Hidden Soul's situation. "Yes." After snapping out of her daze, So Qun Liu handed a spatial bag to Shi Feng and said, "There are 320,000 magic crystals here. This is everything I managed to exchange." This much should be enough," Shi Feng said. After storing the spatial bag away, Shi Feng took out a black flute from his bag space. A dark gold mount? Hidden Soul couldn't help but be surprised when she saw the flute in Shi Feng's hand. Dark gold mounts were by no means on the main continent. At this stage of the game, most guild leaders would have a dark gold mount already. However, it was a different story inside the miniature ancient world. Since players weren't allowed to bring mounts with them when transferring here, players would have no choice but to hunt for their own mounts in the miniature ancient world. However, even until now, no information regarding mounts had spread in the miniature ancient world. Even the various superpowers guild leaders had to use their own 2 feet to travel here. Meanwhile, when Shi Feng blew on the flute, a black hole immediately appeared on the street outside the Candlelight Hotel. Then, a giant white wolf that measured 7 meters tall and had a purple lightning mark on its head walked out of the black hole, its 3 snowy white tails swaying slowly from side to side as it moved. Is it a monster invasion? No, it's a mount. Damn! Someone already got a mount. What rank is this mount? Why does it have such a powerful aura? The players walking on the street grew restless and confused when they saw the Thunder Wolf appearing. Then, they turned toward Shi Feng's group, their eyes filled with curiosity and envy. In the current era where players could only travel using their feet, obtaining even a basic mount would elevate their leveling efficiency by a significant margin, let alone a mount that was as big as the Thunder Wolf. It was common knowledge that a mount's size reflected their strength to a certain extent. Meanwhile, a 7-meter-tall mount was at least equal to a great lord of the same level in strength. In the current miniature ancient world, it would be immensely useful to have a great lord on one's side. This mount looks so cool. I'd buy it in a heartbeat even if I have to pay 1,000,000 credits for it. Just 1 million? Are you dreaming? Dark gold mounts go for at least 3 million even on the main continent, let alone the miniature ancient world. Not to mention, with how strong this wolf looks, it might even be an epic mount. If that's the case, the various guilds would probably fight for it even if they have to pay 20 million. A great lord ranked mount isn't just a means of transportation. It can also be incredibly useful in battle. Just this point alone is more than enough for the various guilds' executives to fight to obtain it. That's right. I'd be willing to become the girlfriend of whoever owns such a mount. When the surrounding crowd saw the Thunder Wolf sitting down before Shi Feng and sticking its tongue out cutely, they nearly drooled out of envy. The biggest trouble players currently faced in the miniature ancient world was transportation. Even with the speed of a Tier 3 player, it'd take over half an hour just to run from the city to some of the closer leveling spots, while some of the farther ones required 1 to 2 hours of continuous running. As for farther maps, few players would be willing to travel there. This was because of the mysterious energy that filled the miniature ancient world. So long as players stepped out of the protection of NPC cities, this mysterious energy would continuously corrode their bodies, reducing their stamina and concentration. This meant that players only had limited time to grind out in the fields. If players spent too much time on traveling, it would impact their leveling efficiency significantly. Meanwhile, the assistance a Great Lord ranked mount could provide would absolutely increase the owner's leveling speed by 2 times or more. A Great Lord ranked archaic species? Shi Feng was similarly astonished when he saw the Thunder Wolf's attribute panel. On the main continent, the average level 100 Dark Gold mount would only start out at the Lord rank. Moreover, even if players nurtured their Dark Gold mounts properly, their mounts could, at most, reach the Great Lord rank. Yet, now, the Dark Gold mount, or, more specifically, the ancient Dark Gold mount before him had actually started out at the Great Lord rank. Moreover, it was even an archaic species. In front of it, ordinary Great Lords of the same level were nothing but pushovers. If he nurtured the Thunder Wolf well, it might even ascend to the Tier 4 mythic rank in the future. At that time, it'd be a nigh unstoppable force on land. However, compared to the Thunder Wolf's combat power, what surprised Shi Feng even more was its movement speed. The Thunder Wolf's movement speed was close to rivaling that of Tier 3 common flying mounts. In other words, its movement speed was on par with that of Tier 4 players. Blackie, how about selling me that Shadow Panther of yours? If a fragmented legendary item drops in the future, I'll be sure to let you have it first, Fire Cloud said to Blackie after seeing the Thunder Wolf. Scram! I'm a magical class while you're a melee class. We don't even use the same items. Blackie said contemptuously. Meanwhile, after Shi Feng was done inspecting the Thunder Wolf's stats, he hopped onto its back and looked at Hidden Soul, saying, "Hop on." In response, Hidden Soul snapped out of her daze and jumped onto the Thunder Wolf's back as well. "Let's go," Shi Feng said to Sokyun Liu and the others as he pulled on the Thunder Wolf's reins. Immediately, the Thunder Wolf retracted its tongue and stood up. Then, putting force into its legs, it propelled itself forward, transforming into a gale as it sped through the street and vanishing from everyone's vision in the blink of an eye. What speed! Hidden Soul, who was riding atop the Thunder Wolf, couldn't help but be surprised once more when she experienced the mount's speed. She also had to change her evaluation of the Thunder Wolf's usefulness. Now, she felt that the Thunder Wolf could easily increase Shi Feng's leveling speed by 3 or 4 times rather than just 2 times. Currently, the biggest problem players faced when leveling up wasn't their lacking strength. Instead, it was their limited range of activity. However, with the Thunder Wolf's speed, Shi Feng could increase their range of activity by 10 times or more. He could explore places where other players couldn't reach, and all the resources and monsters in these places would belong to him and nobody else. Naturally, his leveling efficiency would increase even further. After Shi Feng rode the Thunder Wolf out of 100 Flow City, the many players and powers operating in 100 Flow City promptly started looking into the identity of the Thunder Wolf's owner. Meanwhile, with the Thunder Wolf's speed, it only needed to run for 20 minutes before crossing even the farthest maps that current 100 Flow City players grinned in. Subsequently, it took another 2 hours to cross the mountains and forests infested with level 110 plus monsters. Finally, after running ceaselessly for 4 hours, Shi Feng and Hidden Soul arrived at the Misty Canyon, a map infested with level 115 to level 120 monsters. It was also the closest large map to the Boundary River. Chapter 94 Town Rune Crystal. Miniature Ancient World, Misty Canyon. Shi Feng pulled the reins of the Thunder Wolf and stopped in front of the Misty Canyon. Then, he looked back to Hidden Soul and said, "We're here. It's your turn next." As a level 120 map, the Misty Canyon was filled with level 115 monsters or above. Even if he had reached level 105 already, he would still be under a lot of pressure if he had to fight against monsters 10 levels higher. After all, the challenge difficulty of ordinary Great Lords would increase to that of Grand Lord ranked archaic species with such a level difference. Even if his strength attribute had reached the Tier 4 threshold already, he wouldn't dare to go up against several hundred Grand Lord ranked archaic species simultaneously. While these monsters couldn't outright kill him, they were more than capable of exhausting him to death. Not to mention, the Misty Canyon was considered a neutral zone in the miniature ancient world. It was also the map that linked two gods' domains together. The monsters inside weren't just limited to Great Lords and Grand Lords. Mythic field bosses probably littered the place as well. If he came across one of these field bosses, he would have difficulty even escaping. Meanwhile, the assassin class was the most suitable class for exploring maps. This was because the effects of level suppression did not apply to the perception of monsters. With the stealth skill and her combat standard, Hidden Soul could remain undetected even if she moved within 100 yards of a level 120 mythic boss. The terrain here is incredibly complex. Are you sure you want to go inside? Hidden Soul asked after glancing at the canyon ahead. Rather than a canyon, the Misty Canyon looked more like a giant meteor crater. Moreover, in addition to the complex terrain, mist also enveloped the entire crater, which reduced visibility to less than 300 yards. Even if she scouted the area beforehand, it'd be very easy for them to encounter a group of monsters if they weren't careful. The chances of such encounters would also increase the deeper they traveled into the Misty Canyon. Of course. Why would I bring you here otherwise? Shi Feng replied in an affirmative tone. Now that the various powers had increased their efforts in recruiting manpower in the miniature ancient world, he needed to do something to make sure Zero Wing didn't fall behind. Meanwhile, with Zero Wing's lack of resources and funding, the best solution to improve Zero Wing's situation was to secure the Misty Canyon. There were more than 10 NPC cities worth of players trying to enter the Boundary River. Meanwhile, these players could only get to the Boundary River through the Misty Canyon. Adding on the fact that there were no NPC settlements located in or near the Misty Canyon, it went without saying that various powers would fight to establish guild towns in the Misty Canyon in the future. Now that Shi Feng had a town rune crystal, he naturally had to secure the best location in the Misty Canyon as soon as possible. Once he did that, not only could he increase the leveling efficiency of Zero Wing's members, but the guild would also have its funding problem resolved. Once players reached level 110, there would be many experts flooding into the Misty Canyon. At that time, there'd be no need to worry about no players coming to rest in Zero Wing's town. It'd also become much easier for Zero Wing to recruit expert players. After all, who could resist the opportunity to get a huge lead ahead of others in the miniature ancient world? Whatever, it's your choice. But don't blame me if you die. Hidden Soul stopped trying to dissuade Shi Feng after hearing his answer. Although she didn't know what Shi Feng was trying to do here, she had no reason to give up on an opportunity to earn 500,000 GCPs just by completing a simple task. Immediately, Hidden Soul jumped off the Thunder Wolf's back and activated instantaneous movement, vanishing into mist and disappearing from Shi Feng's perception in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, Shi Feng had to admit that Hidden Soul was indeed a monster. After Shi Feng waited for nearly 2 hours, he received a message from Hidden Soul that contained a detailed roadmap leading to the Misty Canyon's inner region. Hidden Soul had also marked the layout of monsters along the route and made notes of their rank, level, and perception range. Her infiltration skills are truly amazing. It's no wonder she managed to kill all those Outer World God-ranked experts and fight Demon's Gate's Deathwind to a standstill, Shi Feng thought as he looked at Hidden Soul's roadmap in admiration. It should be known that the Deathwind was one of Demon's Gate's 9 great experts, and he claimed that he had a divine eye. In terms of strength, Deathwind was capable of going against an entire subworld's experts all by himself. No matter how weak a subworld was, it would have at least several dozen Tier 6 God-ranked experts. In other words, Deathwind was capable of going up against several dozen Tier 6 experts simultaneously. Yet, Hidden Soul managed to fight Deathwind to a standstill in the past. This showed just how much talent and skill she possessed. Although the Hidden Soul in this life had only managed to reach Tier 5, she definitely wasn't as simple as she seemed. Meanwhile, after Shi Feng researched the road map, he recalled the Thunder Wolf and started following the map on foot. An hour later. We can't go any further from here. The area ahead of us is infested with level 120 Grand Lords and level 120 Mythic Bosses, Hidden Soul said as she pointed at the area that linked the Misty Canyon and the Boundary River. I have already explored the surrounding area for locations without monsters and vast terrain as you requested. 2 places match your requirements. Take a look at them yourselves. After saying so, Hidden Soul marked 2 locations on Shi Feng's map of the Misty Canyon. Of the 2 locations she found, one was located by a creek near the Misty Canyon's core region, and the ambient mana here was incredibly dense. The other location was at the top of a cliff in the Misty Canyon's inner region, which overlooked a significant portion of the Misty Canyon. Although it had less dense mana, the location was easily defensible. Meanwhile, after looking at these 2 locations, Shi Feng hesitated only for a moment before he had Hidden Soul lead him to the creek. Mana was the basis of everything in God's domain. Denser mana meant quicker improvements. A mana-rich area would be especially useful when nurturing newcomers in the guild. After circling past a bunch of level 118 demonic beasts, Shi Feng and Hidden Soul arrived before a forest surrounded by a creek. "That's the place," Hidden Soul said as she pointed at the lush forest ahead. "That's it for our agreement. If you don't need me for anything else, I will be taking my leave now." "Aren't you curious why I came here?" Shi Feng asked, smiling as he looked at Hidden Soul. "I might have been curious before, but is there even a need to wonder after seeing all of the actions you have taken here?" In a nonchalant tone, Hidden Soul said, "You are neither here to grind nor search for treasures. You even asked me to find a safe and spacious area. Other than building a town, I can't think of anything else you would be doing here." Hidden Soul wasn't particularly surprised to learn that Shi Feng was trying to establish a town here. After all, Shi Feng was an outer world god-ranked expert. He must possess means beyond the imagination of ordinary powers, so it wouldn't be strange if he could come up with a guild town SP shortly after the miniature ancient world opened. However, in response to Hidden Soul's words, Shi Feng shook his head and smiled, saying, "You're only half correct." Chapter 95 Abyssal Star Ancient City. TL Notes. Town Rune Crystal Settlement Rune Crystal. Half. Hidden Soul was a little surprised. "I indeed plan to set up a settlement here, but other than a settlement, I also plan on establishing an outer mercenary organization for Zero Wing," Shi Feng said. "Meanwhile, I plan on putting you in charge of this mercenary organization." There were all sorts of player forces in God's domain. Other than the mainstream forces like guilds, adventurer teams, trading firms, and assassin organizations, there were also other forces such as mercenary organizations. In the case of mercenary organizations, they catered to independent experts that disliked being bound by restrictions, offering them tasks in exchange for credits or resources in God's domain. Meanwhile, there were many uses for a guild to establish a mercenary organization. Among them, the biggest use was to recruit a large number of independent experts for the guild's use. Currently, although Zero Wing already possessed a good foundation, it was still too weak compared to the various long-standing powers in God's domain. It simply lacked the strength to protect its interests in God's domain. The best example would be the ancient demon court. Had it not been for Shi Feng's strength acting as a deterrence and the ancient demon court's unique characteristics, Zero Wing couldn't have retained ownership over it at all. Meanwhile, with Zero Wing's current members, there was no way it would have enough strength to defend a guild city. It was especially true if the various superpowers set their sights on it. Shi Feng still didn't possess the strength to go up against multiple superpowers simultaneously. Hence, the best solution was for Zero Wing to establish a mercenary organization based in Zero Wing's settlement and quickly recruit the help of a large number of independent experts to assist the guild. By doing so, Zero Wing could ensure its settlement's security while acquiring a large amount of coins and resources. Meanwhile, who better to lead such an organization than Hidden Soul? As a former commander in the Flower of Seven Sins, she was undoubtedly acquainted with many peak and apex independent experts. She would have no trouble attracting these independent experts to work for Zero Wing. "I refuse." Hidden Soul shook her head, flatly refusing Shi Feng's offer. "My goal is only that holy annihilation mana technique. I am not interested in anything else." Hidden Soul naturally understood Shi Feng's intentions. He was most likely trying to use her as a cover against the various superpowers while he manipulated the situation in the dark. She'd be a fool if she agreed to his request. "Don't be so quick to refuse," Shi Feng said, smiling. "I know this job comes with a lot of risks, but with high risks comes high rewards. If you can take on this job and safeguard Zero Wing's settlement, I can give you a copy of the mana technique for free. Moreover, don't you want to see what kind of settlement I'll be establishing?" Hidden Soul was a little tempted when she heard Shi Feng's offer. However, she quickly shook her head after thinking it over. She'd be insane to go against the various superpowers for nothing more than a settlement. However, before Hidden Soul could open her mouth to voice her refusal, Shi Feng took out the settlement rune crystal from his bag and recited the incantation engraved on it. Meanwhile, as soon as Shi Feng started reciting the incantation, an intense pillar of light suddenly emerged from the ground around Shi Feng and shot straight up into the sky. This mana, how is this possible? Hidden Soul was dumbfounded when she saw the light pillar that enveloped Shi Feng. This was because she could sense that the thing before her wasn't a light pillar at all. Instead, it was a pillar of mana so pure and intense that it was already comparable to the mana of Tier 6 gods. Meanwhile, after this pillar of mana extended 1,000 meters into the air, it began spreading apart to form a magic array that covered nearly half of the entire Misty Canyon. Then, once this gigantic magic array had finished forming, an ancient and majestic settlement gradually emerged from it and descended on the forest Shi Feng designated. When the settlement had flattened the forest and settled on the ground, Shi Feng promptly received a series of system notifications. System, congratulations! You have successfully summoned the Abyssal Star Ancient City, one of the 9 ancient legacy cities of the second sequence, and became the ancient city's governor. System, the Abyssal Star Ancient City will receive full protection for 10 natural days. Please construct the city's defenses during the protection period. System, the Abyssal Star Ancient City will be fully opened after 10 natural days. All cities in the surrounding region will be notified at that time. Is this the true foundation of an ancient demon court found in the miniature ancient world? Shi Feng couldn't help but feel complicated when he read the system notifications. He didn't know whether he should laugh or cry about this situation. One of the 9 ancient legacy cities of the second sequence, I won't be able to maintain a low profile even if I want to now. The ancient demon courts were the civilization legacies left behind by the ancient demon gods. Among the legacies found in ancient demon courts, the best legacies would undoubtedly be the settlements the ancient demon gods constructed. Meanwhile, these ancient settlements could be categorized into 3 groups: the 3 holy cities of the first sequence, the 9 ancient legacy cities of the second sequence, and the 100 towns of the third sequence. Although there was a significant disparity between the 3 groups, even the towns in the third sequence were incredibly powerful. Given enough time, a small guild could easily grow into a superpower with the help of a third sequence town. This was also why Shi Feng was confident he could persuade Hidden Soul to help him. These legacy settlements functioned specifically to nurture players. Meanwhile, even Tier 6 God-ranked experts could receive some harvest from a third sequence town, let alone players who hadn't reached Tier 6. However, Shi Feng never imagined that the settlement rune crystal he acquired would yield such an amazing result. He couldn't believe he had summoned the Abyssal Star Ancient City, one of the 9 ancient legacy cities, just by spending 200,000 magic crystals. It should be known that during his previous life, even with the almighty Zero Wing supporting him, he had relied heavily on luck to summon an ancient city. Meanwhile, thanks to this ancient city, Zero Wing was able to solidify its foundation and establish a foothold in the greater God's domain. In contrast, the current Zero Wing had already gained an ancient city despite being a newly established guild. If the greater God's domain's various powers were to learn of this, they would probably mobilize the entirety of their respective world's power to steal this city. Compared to Shi Feng, Hidden Soul had a much greater reaction when she saw the majestic city that had replaced the forest before her. With her eyes filled with shock and confusion, she yelled, "An ancient city!" Originally, she thought that Shi Feng was merely building a new town. She never expected Shi Feng to summon a city, much less an ancient city. As a former commander of the Flower of Seven Sins, Hidden Soul was no stranger to ancient cities. This was because the Flower of Seven Sins also owned several ancient cities. Meanwhile, every ancient city was a treasure trove left behind by an ancient civilization, and it could provide immense help to both individuals and organizations. It'd be more appropriate to call this a primordial city than an ancient city, Shi Feng said as he looked at Hidden Soul's dazed expression. Then, he smiled and said, "Let's go in and take a look." After saying so, Shi Feng began walking toward the Abyssal Star ancient city. Meanwhile, Hidden Soul didn't hesitate for long before she followed after him. TL notes. I mentioned it in a previous chapter, but I will be using settlement as a general term for towns and cities. When I use settlement, I could be referring to towns, cities, or both. Chapter 96 Holy Land. The Abyssal Star ancient city wasn't very large, its size was only that of an advanced town. Unlike an advanced town, though, the ancient city was surrounded by a circle of tall walls. The moment Shi Feng and Hidden Soul stepped into the city, they could instantly feel the mysterious energy in their bodies disappearing rapidly. The speed at which the mysterious energy dissipated here was more than double what they experienced when resting in the hotels of NPC cities. How amazing! The core magic array still isn't in operation, yet not only does it have mana concentration rivaling NPC cities, but it also has such a powerful cleansing effect. Is this the power of a primordial city? Hidden Soul exclaimed when she noticed the changes to her body after entering a city. There was a huge difference between a city with its core magic array activated and a city with its core magic array deactivated. Meanwhile, this was the first time she had seen a city with such powerful effects even with its core magic array deactivated. Unlike Hidden Soul, Shi Feng took this situation calmly. As one of the 9 ancient cities built by the ancient demon gods, the functions Hidden Soul had stated were nothing but the tip of the iceberg. This was because every ancient legacy city of the second sequence would already possess environments rivaling the Holy Lands in God's domain in its initial stage. Some time later, Shi Feng arrived at the heart of Abyssal Star City with Hidden Soul. Situated at the city's heart was an ancient tower that extended up to 500 meters into the air. Meanwhile, situated at the top of the tower was a dazzling rune, the rune acting like a lamp that illuminated the entire city. However, this ancient tower wasn't just a simple lighthouse. Instead, the stronghold held the Abyssal Star ancient city's secrets. Of the 9 ancient legacy cities the ancient demon gods left behind, every one of them possessed a different ability. As an example, the legacy stored within the ancient city Zero Wing obtained during Shi Feng's previous life was related to concentration, and it could help players improve their concentration rapidly. Thanks to this legacy, the number of Tier 5 and Tier 6 experts Zero Wing possessed far surpassed that of other guilds. Meanwhile, shortly after Shi Feng and Hidden Soul walked into the ancient tower, they were quickly dumbfounded by what they found. When they entered the tower's first floor, the first thing that greeted them was a row of tightly shut stone doors, and every one of these doors had strange symbols engraved on them. Then, after opening a few of these doors, they found that beyond each of these stone doors was a miniature world. Indeed, a miniature world. Every one of these miniature worlds had a unique environment. Or, more specifically, players could freely set the environment they desired in these rooms. They could set the room to become a world filled with only a specific type of mana. They could also set it so that the mana was excited or calm. One could say that these rooms were the ideal training ground for players to improve their control over mana. Incredible! The legacy in this city is truly terrifying. Shi Feng was shocked beyond words as he looked at the many stone doors on the tower's first floor. The mana in God's domain was a composite of various types of mana. It didn't consist of just one specific type of mana. However, when players used skills and spells, they would often use only one specific type of mana. Meanwhile, depending on how much mana of that specific type they managed to accumulate, the speed of their spell casting and the power of their spells would be completely different. If players stood in an environment that possessed only one type of mana, the ambient mana would greatly help them if they were to use skills or spells of the same type. It was especially true when it came to mastering the operating principles of that specific mana type. It should be known that after reaching Tier 5, players would need to understand the operating principles of the various types of mana in order to construct their divine body and reach Tier 6. However, the process of learning these operating principles was incredibly challenging since players couldn't typically see or touch mana. They could only rely on their other senses to perceive it. The fact that ambient mana was a composite of various mana types made things even more challenging. However, the miniature worlds here provided the solution to this problem. By allowing players to filter the ambient mana around them to just one specific type, these miniature worlds could reduce the difficulty players faced in understanding mana by more than tenfold. After calming his excited heart, Shi Feng couldn't help but turn toward Hidden Soul, who was still in a daze. Then, he smiled and asked, "Now that you've seen this city's abilities, what do you think of my proposal? Are you sure you want to put me in charge of this city?" Hidden Soul asked after snapping out of her daze. She'd be lying if she said she wasn't interested in the Abyssal Star Ancient City. To be precise, no player wouldn't be interested in this city. What was her goal in obtaining the Holy Annihilation Mana technique? Wasn't it so that she could better understand and control mana? Meanwhile, the Abyssal Star Ancient City provided an unbelievable training environment to improve her learning efficiency by more than tenfold. How could she possibly refuse the chance to make use of this training environment? "Since I am having you establish a mercenary organization with this city as its base, I will naturally leave this city's responsibility with you," Shi Feng said, nodding without hesitation. Had he summoned only a third sequence town, he might have had a way of letting Zero Wing defend it. However, a second sequence city was no longer something the current Zero Wing could defend. After all, the existence of this city would be revealed to the entire miniature ancient world in 10 days. The only solution Shi Feng could think of to retain ownership over the city was having Hidden Soul step forward as its governor. After all, the Flower of Seven Sins was in existence no weaker than the 5 great super guilds. Of course, Shi Feng also had other solutions to defend the Abyssal Star Ancient City if need be. However, not only would there be no benefits for him in doing so, but revealing these methods would also attract a bunch of trouble to him. "I'll say it up front. If all you want me to do is form a mercenary alliance to guard the Abyssal Star Ancient City, it won't be difficult to do so. I can even contact a group of powerful experts to help us right now," Hidden Soul said after pondering for some time. "But the real problem is those superpowers. If they learn of the benefits of this city, they might dispatch Tier 6 God-ranked experts here. In my current state, there is nothing I can do against them." Previously, she had refused Shi Feng's offer because she thought that Shi Feng was merely establishing a guild town. If that were the case, the mercenary alliance she established wouldn't attract many independent experts to join. It was especially true for the independent experts she was acquainted with. Every one of them was incredibly prideful, and they showed no interest whatsoever even when the various super guilds offered them an advisory position in their respective guilds. There was no way they would help defend a measly guild town just for some meager leveling resources. However, it was a different story if the target of defense was the Abyssal Star Ancient City. With what the city had to offer, she was confident she could persuade her acquaintances to join her. She could even use this chance to reclaim her position in the Flower of Seven Sins. Unfortunately, with the standards of her and her acquaintances, there was nothing they could do if the various superpowers decided to dispatch Tier 6 God-ranked experts. It was especially so when they might have to face more than one Tier 6 God-ranked expert. "Don't worry about that. I'll step forward if God-ranked experts come," Shi Feng said, chuckling. Chapter 97 Arrival of New Era. "If you can hold back those God-ranked experts, there shouldn't be any problems on my side," Hidden Soul said, nodding. "I won't even need 10 days to get the Mercenary Alliance up and running. Also, my suggestion is that we grade the Alliance's members based on contribution. For now, the ranks I have in mind are Bronze, Silver, and Gold, and we will use these ranks to determine how long each member can spend inside these miniature worlds." There were 100 stone doors on the ancient tower's first floor, which translated to 100 miniature worlds. That was by no means a large number. Moreover, although the ancient tower had 2 more floors, the second and third floors would only open when the city was promoted to a higher rank. Hence, there was no way to increase the number of miniature worlds inside the ancient tower within a short period. However, considering they would be using these miniature worlds to advertise Zero Wing's mercenary alliance, they needed to make it possible for as many people to experience the effects of these miniature worlds as possible. Otherwise, the number of players joining the mercenary alliance would decrease drastically. Meanwhile, the best way to do so was by limiting the amount of time each player could spend inside these miniature worlds. No problem. Shi Feng nodded in agreement. But in addition to making contributions, members must also pay a fee to use the miniature worlds. Bronze members will have to pay 200 magic crystals per hour, silver members will get a 10% discount, and gold members will get a 20% discount. The Abyssal Star Ancient City might be powerful, the miniature worlds cost a lot to operate. Each miniature world consumed 100 magic crystals per hour when in operation. If converted to coins, that would be nearly 50 gold coins per hour. If Zero Wing tried to subsidize this cost, the guild would go bankrupt in less than a day. My thoughts are similar. I'll get the city's management details sorted and send them to you afterward, Hidden Soul said, having no objections about Shi Feng's pricing. In her opinion, there wouldn't be a problem even if they charged 500 magic crystals per hour to use the miniature worlds, let alone 200 magic crystals. After all, it was incredibly challenging to grasp the operating principles of mana under normal circumstances. If her acquaintances were to find out that there was a way to reduce that difficulty by more than tenfold, they would probably beg her to let them stay in the miniature worlds for as long as possible. Afterward, Shi Feng passed a portion of the Abyssal Star Ancient City's authority to Hidden Soul and 100,000 magic crystals for backup. Then, after making sure that everything was okay, he chose to go offline to rest. As for the remaining matters relating to the city, he left all decision-making to Hidden Soul. It was without a doubt the best solution. After all, even he wasn't a match for Hidden Soul when it came to managing a mercenary organization. Then, once Hidden Soul had stabilized the Abyssal Star Ancient City's operations, all he needed to do was have Zero Wing secretly garrison the city. Jinhai City. When Shi Feng logged out of God's domain, the morning sun was already shining into his bedroom on the second floor. Normally, even if he had spent the entire night awake in God's domain, he should wake up in a refreshed state. Now, though looked incredibly exhausted as he climbed out of his virtual gaming cabin. Sure enough, the cabin's nutrient solution isn't enough to supplement the improvements I made this time. When Shi Feng saw that the gaming cabin's nutrient solution tank was already empty, he quickly retrieved a bottle of A-rank nutrient fluid from the fridge. Then, as soon as he drank it, he could feel his exhausted mind recovering significantly. Most people might be treating God's domain as merely a virtual reality game, but Shi Feng was fully aware that God's domain wasn't just a simple game. Instead, it was also a ladder of evolution. While playing God's domain, players would receive gradual improvements to their brains. Then, their bodies would also start to improve to keep up with their brains' increased activity. However, these improvements came at the cost of a huge amount of energy. If players couldn't replenish the consumed energy in time, they might even end up burning their life energy. Of course, ordinary Tier 3 players would probably never face a situation where they would burn their life energy. This was because this was a situation that would only occur when the brain had managed to surpass the limits of its mental capacity. Meanwhile, after Shi Feng recovered from exhaustion, he clenched his fists and smiled. Although I exhausted myself by using light shadow many times, I made a lot of improvements as a result. My physical fitness is probably on par with top-tier athletes now. At this rate, I'll only need to train in the body strengthening technique for a few more days to reach the half-step master standard. Although the half-step master standard was nowhere near the master standard, so long as he had the physical fitness of a half-step master, he wouldn't have to worry about facing hidden threats. He could even join the God's Domain Alliance and become an official member. The God's Domain Alliance would, at most, provide basic support when it came to players who didn't qualify to become an official member. However, it was completely different once someone became an official member. So long as someone managed to become an official member of the God's Domain Alliance, even the various corporations wouldn't dare to take any actions toward this person in the real world. Not on the surface, at least. Otherwise, it would be a direct provocation to the God's Domain Alliance, which was something not even international corporations could afford to do. Because of this, powerful experts who had offended the various superpowers would never be afraid of suffering retaliation in the real world. They simply had to figure out how they could survive in God's domain. Meanwhile, after Shi Feng executed 2 repetitions of the body strengthening technique, he washed up and got ready to head to the God's Domain Academy. However, just as he was about to leave his home, the doorbell suddenly rang. Upon checking the front door's security camera through his watch, Shi Feng saw a middle-aged man and a young woman standing outside his house. To his surprise, his visitors were Qi Lianshan and Chen Ziyu. "Instructor Qi? Aren't we about to head to the secret pavilion's branch headquarters? Why did you suddenly come to my place?" Shi Feng asked, feeling a little surprised and confused as he looked at Qi Lianshan and Chen Ziyu. Today was a big day for Jinhai University's God's Domain Academy. After all, the visit to the secret pavilion's branch headquarters was essentially a free training session for the Academy's students and instructors. Meanwhile, the opportunity to train at a transcendental power didn't come by easily. "It is because of this that I hurried here to find you, Instructor Shi," Qi Lianshan said with a bitter smile. "Did something happen?" Shi Feng asked curiously. "The problem lies with me." After taking a look at Chen Ziyu, Qi Lianshan gritted his teeth and continued, "I hope that you can become Ziyu's instructor, Instructor Shi." "Me? Become her instructor?" Shi Feng couldn't help but look at Chen Ziyu, who currently had her head lowered in silence. Chen Ziyu was Instructor Qi prized pupil. Shi Feng found it hard to imagine that Qi Lianshan would take the initiative to give Chen Ziyu to him. After all, it should be known that apprentice-teacher relationships were given great importance in the current God's domain. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many students trying to fight for Wu Lingling. "That's right." Qi Lianshan nodded. "Then," he said, "I wouldn't have wanted to do this, either, if I wasn't left with no better choice. However, Ziyu can successfully get into God's Domain's talent camp, this will all be worth it." God's Domain's talent camp. Shi Feng couldn't help but be confused. He had no idea what Qi Lianshan was talking about at all. "This is a secret I found out only recently." Withholding no information, Qi Lianshan explained, "The visit to the secret pavilion's branch headquarters today isn't just a simple tour or training camp. In reality, it is a selection meeting for all God's Domain academies in the world. It isn't just the secret pavilion that is involved. Many super guilds are also holding tours today as a front for this selection meeting. Meanwhile, the organizer for this meeting is the God's Domain Alliance. It seems that the God's Domain Alliance is planning to go all out and nurture a group of geniuses to combat the World Passage's opening. However, as most fourth-year students have already signed contracts with the various powers, the selection meeting this time is mainly targeted toward third-year students." Chapter 98 True Transcendental Power. The God's Domain Alliance is going all out to nurture geniuses. Shi Feng was very surprised to hear this news. The War of Worlds was no secret to him. Although there also existed an organization similar to the God's Domain Alliance during his previous life, this organization had only started nurturing talents of the new generation after the World Gate had fully opened. Meanwhile, once the World Gate was fully opened, there wouldn't be just one world passage connecting the two God's domains. Instead, countless passages would randomly form, allowing the two God's domains to compete and devour each other. However, as Tier 6 God-ranked experts were needed to safeguard key locations, the main fighting force of the two God's domains in the War of Worlds would consist of Tier 4 and Tier 5 experts. Originally, Shi Feng thought it would be much later before the God's Domain Alliance realized the need to nurture the new generation's talents. He didn't think the organization would notice it already. This is indeed outside of everyone's expectations, Qi Shan said, expressing his understanding when he saw the look of surprise on Shi Feng's face. But I can confidently tell you that this information is true. Originally, the God's Domain Alliance was merely a loose organization focused on hosting events in the real world. While it might be considered the biggest force in God's domain, it had hardly any territory in the game. So, nobody could have expected that the God's Domain Alliance would suddenly decide to nurture geniuses unaffiliated to it and spare no cost while doing so. But what does this have to do with Zihu becoming my apprentice? Shi Feng asked as he looked at Qi Shan in confusion. According to my sources, the selection this time requires students to be at the half-step refinement realm standard at the very least. In addition, their instructors must be at the flowing water realm or above. If a student can't meet these two conditions, they won't even qualify to participate in the selection, Qi Shan said, sighing. We wouldn't have had to take such measures if I were still in my prime, but I'm afraid you are the only person who is in such a realm in our academy right now, Instructor Shi. It seems the God's Domain Alliance has put a lot of considerations into this, Shi Feng said, realization dawning upon him. The God's Domain Alliance indeed had access to an unimaginable amount of resources. However, players couldn't become powerful experts simply by having a lot of resources. They also needed capable teachers to offer them pointers. If a player had a flowing water realm expert by their side constantly offering them guidance, they could improve their combat standards much more quickly. Moreover, flowing water realm experts were tier 4 players on average, with some even being tier 5 players. So, they could help their students level up very quickly as well. In other words, while the God's Domain Alliance might be willing to offer students with resources, students would need to have their instructors resolve the problem of leveling up and improving their combat standards. I know you are very busy teaching Wu Lingling and the others, and you probably don't have a lot of free time to participate in the selection, Instructor Shi. Gritting his teeth, Qi Shan said, but so long as you agree to participate in the selection this time, I will give you a bottle of S-rank nutrient fluid afterward. S-rank nutrient fluids were incredibly precious to expert players. Even though Qi Shan was a senior instructor at Jinhai University's God's Domain Academy, it had taken him great pains to exchange even one bottle. Originally, he had planned to use this bottle to recover his mental state. However, compared to Chen Zihu's future, the recovery of his mental state could wait. A bottle of S-rank nutrient fluid. After pondering for some time, Shi Feng said, "Okay, I can agree to your offer, but I'm not taking responsibility for Zihu's subsequent leveling up." Shi Feng was currently an intermediate instructor already. Although he had the qualifications to exchange for S-rank nutrient fluids, it would take him a long time to accumulate 1 million academy points. Most importantly, there was an exchange limit put on S-rank nutrient fluids. If he recalled correctly, intermediate instructors were only allowed to exchange 1 bottle a year. However, 1 bottle was nowhere near enough for him. After all, he was no longer young. He would need a lot of energy to recover his life force, repair his body's damaged cells, and improve his physical fitness. You don't have to worry about this point, Instructor Shi. All you need to do is pass the selections test, Qi Shan said, feeling a little excited when he heard Shi Feng's answer. Then, he quickly tapped on his quantum watch and transferred Chen Zihu's instructor position to Shi Feng. Meanwhile, Shi Feng promptly clicked agree when he received the transfer prompt on his watch. With this, he became Chen Zihu's instructor on paper. After settling this matter, Qi Shan quickly led Shi Feng to his luxury sedan and drove him and Chen Zihu to Jinhai University to meet up with the other students and instructors. Liu Feng City, Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters. As a first-tier city, Liu Feng City's population exceeded 10 million. Meanwhile, the Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters sat in the heart of the city, the headquarters' 2 towers having over 200 floors and occupying an area of 2 sports stadiums. The twin towers were more than capable of accommodating tens of thousands of people to work and train inside. How spectacular! So, this is one of the secret pavilion's branch headquarters. As expected of a transcendental power in God's domain. Just one of its branch headquarters already looks so amazing. It would be great if I could become an internal member of the secret pavilion. Quick, look! The secret pavilion's recruits are training over there. It's true. The instructor teaching them seems to be Rainbow Chaser, one of the secret pavilion's newly promoted Tier 5 experts. When Jinhai University's students looked out the windows of their bus and saw the secret pavilion's branch headquarters, they couldn't help but marvel at the sight before them. The state of the secret pavilion's branch headquarters was on an entirely different level even when compared to the main headquarters of first-rate guilds. Just the instructor responsible for guiding the recruits at the branch headquarters was already a Tier 5 expert. This was a luxury no first-rate guild could afford for a branch headquarters. Moreover, the 1,000 recruits training on the field between the two towers were incredibly talented. Even though these recruits looked like they were only 14 or 15 years old, even the weakest among them was already at the trial tower's 5th floor middle stage standard. If put in Jinhai University, they'd be regarded as geniuses among geniuses. Yet, in the secret pavilion, these geniuses were nothing more than ordinary recruits, a fact proven by the emblems they wore on their shirts. Before becoming official internal members, the secret pavilion's recruits would only receive a 1-star light blue emblem. Only after becoming an official internal member would they receive a 2-star dark blue emblem. While Jinhai University's students were in shock over the sight they just saw, a long line of buses started arriving at the secret pavilion's branch headquarters one after another, their numbers exceeding 80. This meant that at least 80 God's Domain academies had come to participate in the secret pavilion's tour this time. This number far exceeded their initial expectations. Moreover, out of these buses, there were even some that transported students from advanced God's Domain academies. What's going on? Why are students from advanced academies here as well? Gu Tong couldn't help but be shocked when he looked at the students alighting from the various advanced God's Domain academies buses. Advanced God's Domain academies. To most students seeking to make a living from God's Domain, advanced God's Domain academies were schools they dreamed of entering. Unlike the average God's Domain academy, advanced God's Domain academies were true high-level education centers with several major corporations backing them. Some even had the support of international organizations. Meanwhile, with such ample funding, the instructors these advanced academies could recruit were also much superior in quality, with even the weakest instructor in these academies being a refinement realm expert. Participants of God's Domain's A-League would also hold lectures in these academies from time to time. However, as with the quality of their instructors, these advanced academies also had a high entry requirement. If students wished to even participate in the enrollment test of these advanced academies, they'd need to be at the 5th floor middle stage standard, which was the official standard of ordinary experts, at the very least. What is the secret pavilion even thinking? I can't believe they invited a bunch of nobodies to the tour. That's right. The secret pavilion even wants us to spar with them. How are we supposed to improve by sparring with these country bumpkins? I think we might even regress if we fought them. When a group of freshmen alighted from an advanced academy's bus and saw the freshmen of the other academies around them, a look of disdain appeared on their faces. Meanwhile, the students from the other academies naturally grew angry when they heard the words of this group of students. However, none of them dared to say anything since the other party consisted of experts at the trial tower's 5th floor late stage or above. These students were not people they could compete against. Most importantly, the instructors following these students were not existences they could afford to offend since every one of them was a flowing water realm expert. These experts were either elders of first-rate guilds or vice-commanders of adventurer teams. Meanwhile, after Jinhai University's bus found a parking spot, Lin Yeyu, the leader of the group, said, "Let's get off the bus as well. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 99 Extraordinary Realm. When Lin Yayu alighted from the bus, the many students and instructors gathered on the field couldn't help but turn to look at her. Wow! What a pretty lady! She's Clear Sky, one of Mysterious Moon's top 2 talents. Jinhai University's development is getting better and better. Previously, it was Wu Xiao Xiao. Now, I hear that even the geniuses of first-rate guilds are enrolling there. I heard that another genius of Wu Zioxio's caliber has appeared in Jinhai University. I believe it is Wu Zioxio's little sister, Wu Lingling. She reached the 5th floor's middle stage during her enrollment test. With Jinhai University's current state, its academy might rank within the top 4 of the province this year. Many of the students and instructors on the field couldn't help but grow envious as they watched Jinhai University's students getting off their bus. Getting on the provincial ranking list was of great importance even to advanced God's Domain academies, let alone ordinary God's Domain academies. By getting on the provincial ranking list, not only could an academy attract more investments from corporations, but it could also recruit better quality students in the coming year. This, in turn, would create a positive cycle that would elevate the academy's status. Meanwhile, the elevation of an academy's status was beneficial to both students and instructors. Not only would their status in the world increase, but the resources they received would also increase. An academy's status was especially important now that the various corporations were placing significant importance on the miniature ancient world. Their thirst for talents and the prices they were offering had already reached unprecedented levels. However, while those from ordinary academies talked about Jinhai University in admiration, those from advanced academies also took notice of Jinhai University's students and instructors. Specifically, a 20-year-old woman with long brown hair and a curvaceous body looked toward Wu Lingling and said, "Wu Zioxio's little sister? It seems the freshman competition this time is going to be interesting. Aren't you overestimating Wu Lingling, big sis?" A 17-year-old boy with messy hair and a sleepy face said, sneering as he looked at Wu Lingling as well. Wu Xiaoxiao might be able to call herself your opponent, but Wu Lingling's enrollment score is nothing special. The 5th floor middle stage standard might be extraordinary in ordinary academies, but that is just the average in our Tianxing University. Not even those at the 5th floor late stage can rank within the top 20, let alone the 5th floor middle stage. The dozen or so boys and girls standing around the lazy-looking youth nodded in agreement. As an advanced academy, Tianxing University's God's Domain Academy required all applicants to reach the Trial Tower's 5th floor middle stage at the very least. Meanwhile, those qualified to participate in the Secret Pavilion's tour this time were either at the 6th floor's early stage or those close to reaching it. Hence, in their eyes, Wu Lingling's enrollment score was nothing noteworthy. Don't be careless, Xuanyi. Other than the freshmen from the various academies, the Secret Pavilion's freshmen will also participate in the freshman competition this time. Those people are true geniuses. If you wish to receive priority training from the Secret Pavilion, you'll need to rank within the top 10 at the very least, the brown-haired woman said as she turned to look at the several dozen Secret Pavilion members walking toward the field. Don't worry, big sis. Aren't you aware of my strength? I can even get into the top 5 without any trouble, let alone the top 10, the young man named Lu Xuanyi said confidently. None of the other students from Tianxing University voiced any objections when they heard Lu Xuanyi's arrogant words. This was because Lu Xuanyi was a true genius at Tianxing University, his talent surpassing even his elder sister, Lu Yunya. Meanwhile, Lu Yunya was one of the top 2 geniuses of their advanced academy. When Lu Xuanyi enrolled in Tianxing University's God's Domain Academy, he was already at the 6th floor middle stage standard. After receiving guidance from the academy's instructors, his strength had skyrocketed. Thus, he wouldn't have any trouble going up against the Secret Pavilion's top-tier geniuses. While Lu Xuanyi and the others were talking, the Secret Pavilion's members had arrived at the center of the field. Standing in the lead of these several dozen people was a woman in sportswear looking to be in her early 20s. Meanwhile, the moment everyone looked at this woman, silence instantly enveloped the entire field as excitement and confusion filled everyone. It's Empress Purple Jade. What's going on? The Empress is actually hosting this tour. At this moment, even the instructors of the various academies were surprised to see the woman in sportswear, let alone the students. Empress Purple Jade. She had been one of the secret pavilion's top 3 geniuses when God's Domain first launched. Now, she had even become a Tier 6 sword god, a legendary existence whom everybody in God's Domain knew. Normally, one would have a better chance at winning the lottery than meeting Purple Jade in person. Yet, now, Purple Jade had actually appeared in one of the secret pavilion's branch headquarters. Moreover, by the looks of it, she would be acting as the host for the tour this time. So, how could everyone not be shocked by this situation? Instructor She. My eyes aren't playing tricks on me, right? It's actually Empress Purple Jade. Wu Lingling exclaimed, her eyes filled with an indescribable sense of reverence as she looked at Purple Jade. She's so beautiful. She also looks much younger than in her combat videos. She's at the extraordinary realm already? Shi Feng was also surprised when he saw Purple Jade. Shi Feng was no stranger to Purple Jade. After all, he had partnered with the secret pavilion on many occasions during his previous life. However, unlike in his previous life, the Purple Jade in this life was completely different. Although she had similarly become a Tier 6 sword god, she looked ridiculously young in this life. It should be known that Purple Jade was only slightly younger than him. Yet, now, she looked no different than a 20-year-old. She even gave off an otherworldly feeling, and it felt like she was no longer mortal. Meanwhile, the only explanation he could come up with for this situation was that Purple Jade's life rating had already reached the extraordinary realm. Meanwhile, the extraordinary realm was also known as the Great Grandmaster Realm, and this was an evolution he had expended great effort to achieve. Moreover, this happened after he gained access to the greater God's Domain and acquired many fortuitous opportunities. Yet, now, Purple Jade had already reached this realm even before their current subworld had gained access to the greater God's Domain. Her talent was truly terrifying. However, in response to everyone's shock and confusion, Purple Jade simply scanned the crowd before her indifferently and said, "Welcome to the Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters. I will be your host for today's tour." TL notes. 1 Life rating, this is unrelated to the life rating in God's Domain. I couldn't think of a better term to use here. I'll be differentiating the two by capitalization. Lowercase, life rating, equals real world. Uppercase, life rating, equals God's Domain. 2 Great Grandmaster Realm, I'm assuming this refers to the realm above mental strength Grandmaster. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 100 Leaving everyone in the dust. After Purple Jade briefed everyone about the upcoming tour, she let the elite members behind her show their guests around the headquarters. Meanwhile, when the various academies' students and instructors got to see and try out the top-tier training facilities available in the headquarters, they couldn't help but be awed and drool in envy. According to what they experienced, they could tell that these training facilities could help an ordinary expert become a refinement realm expert in just 2 or 3 years. The efficiency of these facilities was beyond anything their academies had access to. After touring the headquarters for several hours, the secret pavilion's elite members led everyone to the underground training field to begin today's main event. The freshman competition. The underground training field was much larger than the area the 2 headquarter buildings occupied on the surface, and it could easily fit 4 full-sized stadiums. With such a huge area, over 10,000 people could train here simultaneously. Currently, though, there were only a little over 1,000 people gathered here, so the field looked empty. The freshman competition this time is going to be slightly different. We won't be holding one-on-one matches. Instead, we will have all participants attempt the trial tower, Purple Jade said as she scanned the crowd before her. The secret pavilion will award the top 10 participants of each academy with 1 bottle of S-rank nutrient fluid, and those who rank within the top 10 of the overall ranking list will receive an additional 3 bottles. In addition, those who manage to rank within the top 5 overall will also get to join the Secret Pavilion's Genius Training Program. As soon as Purple Jade finished speaking, the freshmen of the various academies immediately grew excited. None of them thought that the Secret Pavilion would be so generous. Not only did they have an opportunity to acquire S-rank nutrient fluids to strengthen their bodies, but they even had a chance at becoming one of the Secret Pavilion's internal members and receiving the training of one. I must get into the top 10. When Gu Tong heard Purple Jade's words, he couldn't help but look at Wu Lingling with eyes burning with fighting spirit. Just you wait. I'll make you understand who's the true number 1 genius in Jinhai Academy. Top 5 in the overall rankings? I'm getting in for sure. Over at Tianxing Academy's group, fighting spirit similarly filled Lu Xuanyi after he heard Purple Jade's words. The top 5 will get to join the Secret Pavilion's Genius Training Program? When Chen Zia watched as the various academies' freshmen climbed into the prepared virtual gaming cabins one after another, a look of envy appeared on her face. As a transcendental power in God's domain, the Secret Pavilion was in no way inferior to the 5 great super guilds. Even a genius like Wu Xiaoxiao did not have the qualifications to join the Secret Pavilion and receive priority training. Yet, now, the Secret Pavilion had loosened its requirements and allowed the various academies' freshmen to fight for a spot in its training program. It was a much more extravagant reward than when she participated in the Secret Pavilion's tour. There's no point in envying the opportunities of others, Ziyu, Qi Lianshan said when he noticed the envy on Chen Ziyu's face. What you need to do now is figure out how you can pass the God's Domain Association's selection. So long as you pass the selection, the training and resources you'll receive from the association will not be inferior to what the Secret Pavilion can offer in any way. I understand. Chen Ziyu nodded, the fighting spirit in her eyes flaring up. Although she couldn't receive training from the Secret Pavilion, the God's Domain Association's training was equally good. I wonder how many of our academy's students will get into the top 5 of the overall rankings. Hard to say. I heard that the Secret Pavilion has many monstrously talented recruits this year. The only students I can think of who have a chance of getting in would be Tianxing Academy's Lu Xuanyi and Liufeng Academy's Xia Cheng. Indeed. Lu Xuanyi is the apprentice of Soaring Snake, the leader of Ouroboros's 12 apostles. I heard that he has already learned 2/3 of Soaring Snake's skills. Liufeng University's Xia Cheng isn't any worse, either. I heard that Liufeng University's dean is teaching her personally and that she has already mastered an advanced combat technique. I heard that Jinhai Academy also has a shining star this year. I believe her name is Wu Lingling, and she is that Wu Xiaoxiao's younger sister. According to my sources, Wu Lingling is even more talented than Wu Xiaoxiao, and she has achieved rapid improvements after entering the academy, so she should have a chance as well. Impossible. Wu Lingling's teacher is incredibly weak. I heard that he used to be the guild leader of a second-rate guild, but he ended up getting fired. There is no way the resources he has can compare to Lu Xuanyi's and Xia Cheng's instructors. Indeed. I heard about Wu Lingling's situation as well. If she could find a good instructor, she might have stood a chance against those 2 little monsters and could have competed for the top 5 positions. While watching the freshmen getting into the virtual gaming cabins, the instructors from the various academies discussed who could enter the overall rankings top 5. If you have problems with this website, please continue reading your novel on our new website mynovelfool.com. Thanks. Although the Secret Pavilion's freshman competition wasn't an accurate representation of the overall strength of God's Domain's latest generation of players, those who could rank among the top of the overall rankings could still be regarded as one of the top talents in the country. In a situation where veteran powerhouses were reluctant to enter the miniature ancient world, the new generation's top talents would undoubtedly become the various powers leaders in the miniature ancient world in the future. Meanwhile, when Qi Lianshan and the other instructors from Jinhai University heard the discussion of the other academy's instructors, they couldn't help but sigh dejectedly. Setting aside Xi Feng's teaching standards, just the resources he could offer to Wu Lingling would already put Wu Lingling in a significantly inferior position compared to the likes of Lu Xuanyi and Xia Chen. Unless Jinhai Academy could attract the attention of international corporations or God's domain's various superpowers, there was no way Jinhai Academy's resources could match the various advanced academies. Inside the lounge of the underground training field. Why didn't you notify me that you would be visiting, Commander Zi Kaiyang? Also, isn't it only a freshman competition? You didn't have to come in person, a burly middle-aged man in his 40s said tentatively as he looked at Purple Jade. I just thought of checking Lei Li's progress. You don't need to mind me, Purple Jade replied in a dull tone. The middle-aged man couldn't help but be rendered speechless when he heard Purple Jade's words. Although he knew that Purple Jade had designated the girl named Lei Li as her apprentice, and she even pampered the girl quite a lot, he didn't think Purple Jade would prioritize the girl to such an extent. After all, a Tier 6 sword god had much more important things to do than spectate a competition. However, he also had to admit that Lei Li was incredibly talented. Despite starting as someone who knew hardly anything about God's domain, Lei Li had already become the Secret Pavilion's #1 rookie after undergoing just 2 months of training. Moreover, her position as #1 was unshakable. After all, in just 2 short months, Lei Li had gone from being just at the Trial Tower's first floor standard to the half-step refinement realm standard. Her talent surpassed even Purple Jade. Most importantly, Lei Li was only 16 this year. Lei Li will definitely come in first place. There is simply too big of a gap between herself and the others, the middle-aged man said. If nothing unexpected happens, she should be able to compete against the others in the Genius training program after 1 more month of training. It seems she didn't slack off. Purple Jade nodded in relief. TL notes. 1 Jinhai Academy, I will be using X Academy to reference X University's God's Domain Academy from now on to simplify things. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible.